Because something fake can never be real. But we hear these things and we accept them. And then we speak them. And there's power in
the
words, because thoughts become words and words become things.
But even the scriptures tell us that life and death is in the power of the tongue. And I think we kind of breeze over that. We don't really understand that is a very, very actual probability. That is the power or a tool of manifestation is the word. In the beginning was word, and the word was life. Affirmation without application.
Faith.
That's the same thing without works. It's the same thing. Yeah. Affirmation without application, it does not create anything.
Right.
You would have from the way that I experienced it, you would have an intermittent or random, seemingly random experience with your ability to manifest. Why am I not able to manifest more consistently? Because I am operating from different paradigms and not consistently applying the tools that are specific to the thing in which I am trying to dance with.
And another way of saying that for persons who follow Bible and scripture is a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. And it's the same thing.
And what is his ways? But his works.
Right.
What he does, his ways, is what he produced.
And his manifestations and his realities. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
I think that's so key, what you said just now. I liken it to planting. You would think I was a gardener. Maybe I was a gardener in a past lifetime. Because I was definitely not a gardener in this lifetime. I had problems with dirt and hands and dirt. But if you plant something, you plant it expecting that it's going to grow. Right? You don't plant something not expecting growth.
Right.
So you plant it, and then in 2 days you don't see anything happening. You pluck it up. You say, well, but I really want it. So I'm planting it again. And then you don't see anything in 7 days, and you pull it up again. You're not giving it a chance to do anything. You're pulling and you're pushing, so you're not sure if it's going to grow, because you keep pulling it up. And so this is how it is with even us creating our own reality or speaking faith. And, we talked, I think it was in the last segment, about miracles. This is why some people experience miracles and some don't, because there's a belief behind that thing. And that's really what faith is. You spoke earlier about the things that we know. And I came across a very, very interesting quote by Albert Einstein this week. And I want to read it. It says, imagination is more important than knowledge.
Yeah.
For knowledge is limited to all we now know and understand, while imagination embraces the entire world and all there ever will be to know and understand. And that's one of the things that I was very, very intentional with my kids. I encourage them to dream. I encourage them to imagine, because I feel that as a child, I was not encouraged to do that. And it was based on the limited understandings and knowledge of, my parents, more specifically my dad, because my dad, my mother and I had an extremely close relationship, but I realized at this point in my life that my dad actually had more influence over me, and I saw it as negative when I was growing up. But that's what I gravitated towards more. The good thing was like, yeah, that's good, that's on the side. This bad thing, I, speak about that all the time. And so, but I understand now, that was in his knowledge and his understanding. But like Maya Angelou says, when you know better, you do better. And so how do we take the information or the revelation that we're getting in this time and truly apply it, like you said earlier? And not be stuck in those places of what we, know, the limited knowledge and know-how that we have.
For me, it's about being able to honestly examine your choices. To be able to look yourself in the mirror and be honest, brutally honest with where you are. It's also about being humble to what else may be available. Because and what I was smiling as you were reading the Albert Einstein quote, because I actually came across that same quote this over the last couple of days.
Wow.
And it was just in my general, introspective period and some of my reading, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I remember that. And so that really struck a chord that we came across that same energy.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a profound part of this conversation, and a profound piece of evidence that we can use in order to feed, our access or nurture our ability to access higher levels. And I say higher in a sense of that's the way we understand things pretty much right now, is in a linear, we talked about this before, we experience it like that, although it's not really higher, it's just different, or it's pure, I guess we should say a pure mindset or experience. But thinking about, I read something else that said science does not explain our imagination, and it kind of is in alignment with the same thing you just read. Imagination allows us to experience science, or science to evolve, and I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
But what was being said is that the sciences that we're now experiencing is because our imagination is expansive and unblocked. And so we're now able to see things that we could not see before. We've touched on dimensions slightly. We mentioned the third dimension, which all of us have heard of, the third dimension all through our life, even through movies and different things, the third encounter, in the 3D. And we spoke about fourth dimensional transition and fifth dimension, but what I want to talk about a little bit is, in sense of application, is also understanding what we perceive as limitations. I'm not on Facebook as much as I typically can be, unless I feel drawn to go there, but I went there one day for about 3 minutes and the only thing that came up in my feed was something that one of my friends posted, which is a picture of a horse, and the horse had the harness on with a rein, and the rein was tied to a chair, and the chair was this little flimsy outdoor plastic chair that we can, that are just common, and it says, we perceive ourselves to be limited beyond where we truly are. So the horse believed that he couldn't move because he's tied to this little plastic chair. I mean, this is a big, powerful looking horse. He could obviously run down, the field with the chair attached to it. It wouldn't have any, bearing on him. But it was such a profound expression to me in vision, because I'm like, wow, that is really a good symbology and articulation of how we are experiencing, or how we are reacting, or we are processing what we're experiencing in our lives sometimes.
Well, it's like, you said the horse, but my example a lot is with the elephant. But it goes to conditioning, because when an elephant is a baby, they tie a chain around its ankle and attach it to a big old rock. So it's a baby, so it doesn't have the strength to move. That's how they control a big elephant, by putting the chain there and attaching it to a rock. And I mean, the elephant is way more powerful than this rock, but it's the conditioning of the limitation. So from the time that they were a child, and this is what happens to us. This is why it's so hard for us sometimes to move beyond, because we've been conditioned to so many different things when we were younger, and ages 1 to 7, that's a very, very influential, instrumental time in our building our belief systems. I know for me, and I'm very open with it, one of the things that I struggle with, or have struggled with throughout life, is financial stability, or the belief that you can have abundance. It's something that I work on a daily basis. But my conditioning when I was younger was never have enough. You always got to borrow from Peter to pay Paul. Money doesn't grow on trees, and so hardship, everything is always difficult. If it isn't one thing, it's the other. And you hear this over and over again, and it becomes a part of your belief system. And so when you reach to a place where you have a greater understanding, or you step into a different level of awareness, it doesn't mean that those habits or beliefs automatically disappear.
Exactly.
It's stuff that you have to work on. So like with the horse, yeah.
Absolutely. And it becomes like residue. You know, even when we've moved beyond and we've started applying these more emotionally intelligent decisions, we still have these patterns within the program. You know, you may hear me say quite a bit that we run off of a program, because when we come in, based on my understanding and my spiritual journey, I've come to understand that, you know, there's a lot that they don't know about our DNA, but our DNA is, you know, encoded with information. Mm-hmm. You know, when we come into embodiment and we incarnate into this physical form and this bio-spiritual makeup, the human instrument, we have a predisposition, if you will, to certain things based on what we agreed what our message was going to be, right. And you know, what the collective vision is and how we can co-create that higher message and facilitate that message of unity and healing and fullness of expression, you know, free-flowing movement. And so the DNA is coded. Now, then there's another aspect of what is activated. How much of your DNA, how many of your DNA strands are activated? And when you have the older paradigms or the older generations, they came in with, it is being understood scientifically now that they came in with less strands activated. They came in, you know, some more than others, but the common amount was 6. And so when your DNA only has a certain level of activation open, those codes are not available, then that's the limitation that is there. It is not impossible to activate them. It's not impossible to move them. But that goes back into the geometries that are happening. And so we talked about, you know, what Christ said about, you know, you have to have the child of the heart the heart of a child, excuse me, to enter the kingdom of God. You know, that's what he's explaining. And this is an idea. We talked about symbols. There's a symbology going on so that we can connect with what's meant. But what I experience to be said is that there's a sacred combination, there's a geometry, there's an alignment that is going on. And when that combination, when you reach that right frequency or whatever is available, and like the DNA code comes together, it fits perfectly. When that aligns, then that doorway opens. So what does that mean for us? That means that there are frequencies, you know, available. Everything holds a frequency. We talked about this before. I think we even broke this down with the cell phone and how the way that they're using cells now. You know, if people understood how cell phones work, it would give you a deeper insight into how we actually connect with different things.
We talked about that off camera, though.
We did. We talked about that off camera. But I'm going to digress just slightly for a minute. I think you shared in one of the other segments that we were speaking on, maybe in the very last segment, but you were sharing that, you know, things mean something different nowadays. Like I think you used the reference to, if you were to call somebody a dog when you were growing up or whatever, right. You know, it was an offensive thing. Right. You know, it was fighting words. Right. And now I can say, yo, you my dog and I'm good, you know, whatever. And I get that. Like the intention is good. The intention is good. It's coming from a good or pure place. However, we have to look at the limitations within the frequency that is available for what we are engaged in.